There are no heroes here. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we will be talking about We Men of Ash and Shadow by H.L. Tinsley. And man, this was a good time and also a bad time because, this is this is definitely a dark and kind of twisted type of story, which is very much the intent here. This one follows John Vanguard, a man with a tortured past who now is working as a hired killer, but he kills the other scourges of society and the people who, in his opinion, deserve killing in this just absolutely brutal city that is not just rife with corruption, it is run on corruption. And there are really don't seem to be any really rules. It's the powerful do what they want. Everybody is just trying to get by and survive. You're not allowed to leave the city. People aren't really allowed to come into the city for the most part. It's just this microcosm of just darkness. This has felt like one of the most deserving of the grim dark type of title for subgenre. Not because it's just it's so unbelievably dark and twisted, just because this is just a very much grim look. The city's grim, the characters, everyone's outlook. There's not a lot of hope here. There aren't heroes. It's not really putting in, humor or other things here. It's just this city of nihilism, and we're along for the ride. And this didn't feel like it was just bludgeoning you with it. It just felt like we were exploring the city, and this is just how the city is. Now, I have a really weird comparison to make here because the whole time through, I couldn't get it out of my head, and it's such a weird one to make, but this kind of reminded me of grimdark Ankh-Morpork, which is the city that we spend a lot of time with in Discworld, and Ankh-Morpork specifically being, a very corrupt city. It's run by the patrician who just kind of rules and has absolute power, and, it's thieves and murderers. They have guilds. They're around. It's just sort of expected that bad things are going to happen to you. Except in Discworld, it's all done for comedy, whereas here it's very much not. And there were a lot of things, like I said, in this where some things you kind of expect to see with the type of story, but the direction it went and the ways it chose to go there, I thought was really interesting and made it really unique. The character of John Vanguard also reminded me in some ways of Shadow from American Gods, where from the book, not the TV show, because the TV show got him all wrong, which is one of the reasons it felt weird to watch. But in American Gods, Shadow is talked about as kind of not being all the way there, almost like he's not a part of the world, and he's just kind of exists but is almost like a part. And that was kind of the feeling I got from John Vanguard, where he's here and he's a character, but in some ways it's like he's not even really alive. He's just kind of existing, just doing what he does, and that is it. And then the main plot point here is he kind of becomes an unwitting mentor to somebody else who is similar in some ways to him as things go on. And this is all happening while he's being asked to, well, not really asked, but he's being told to investigate a very high-profile crime that has occurred. And he slowly finds more and more about what's going on as we get there. And there are a lot of moments in this book too, because there are some big moments, and I'm being vague so as not to spoil, but some big moments where in other stories it would be like, oh, the person's going to step up, they're going to be a hero, they're going to realize these things. And like I said, you really don't get that here. There aren't heroes, there isn't really hope. The ending being, once again, not spoiler, being vague, the ending wraps up the story, but in so many ways doesn't solve anything as well, and it's kind of that very intentional feel. I feel like the author here did a fantastic job with giving you a very satisfying end to the story, but also keeping the tone, because there are other authors who got the unsatisfying part right, but not the any good parts. Abercrombie with it, so I thought that was handled really, really well here. This is something where I am very eager to read the next book and just continue and see what's going to happen in this world, because it was very compelling going through, learning about some of the backstory of these characters. Both the main characters and the side characters, just seeing all of these people, the terrible things they've had in their life, how it's made them what they are, but also just the fact that most people don't really have any sort of choice. You just kind of are whatever you are, and often that's what you're forced to be. You don't really get a choice in the matter, because everybody's just trying to get by and do whatever they have to do to survive, and most people don't even feel like they could ever do anything else. They don't have hope, they don't have dreams. It's just, this is the way life is, and that kind of feeling and the tone throughout is what I think just made this feel especially grimdark for me. I mean, I'm no expert, but from the way I think about grimdark, like I said, I feel like this just hit the nail on the head for me. It wasn't trying to be shocking and edgy. It wasn't trying to just go against every single trope. It was just giving this brutally real world and these brutally real characters that you just feel like these characters are real people that would exist in the world, and they just happen to be in a setting that is particularly unforgiving, and it made it a really interesting read to go through here. So that's kind of, like I said, I've made a few weird comparisons, because Discworld and American Gods are not, in tone and feel, are completely different from this. I just want to note, because one's a comedy and one's gaming, which he always does kind of his own thing. So this doesn't read like either of those. It's just those are kind of the things that popped into my head. Those are also both things that I really enjoyed as well. So I liked those comparisons. I imagine some people might see it differently or not make those connections at all, but that was just kind of the way where my brain went with this one. But it is just a very brutal and a very dark world, and it's like every aspect that we learn about, from the characters to the city. When we find out the history, more of what's happened, when we see the things that happen, you're going to see deaths, you're going to see violence, you're going to see betrayal and plots and conspiracies and corruption, all of that throughout. And instead of the characters having to fight through and come through and overcome it, it's the characters just being the characters, and not everything works out. Most things probably aren't going to work out for these characters in the long run, but I at the same time just felt very compelled to continue reading. I'm definitely, like I said, going to be getting the second book. I'm not sure how many books this is going to be, but I will definitely be reading them. This is also a debut, and I have to say a very, very impressive debut, especially because it can take a while, especially in a story set like this, where we have kind of a smaller setting that's very focused on our characters. It can be really hard to set that up and have it be compelling, especially in a first book, and to get kind of the writing style and the tone and all of that down in a debut. That is not easy. I have read many a debut, and this is definitely up there with the high ranks of debuts that I've had. So I have to give props once again to H.L. Tinsley, the author here, because this was a really good book all on its own, and thinking about the fact that it's a debut just kind of gives it that extra wow, you accomplished a lot in a debut. So I just have to say that is really impressive. This is definitely, if you like darker stories, you like that kind of grim feel going through, this is definitely one to check out. Like I said, it's not just this super in-your-face, edgy kind of thing. So I know there's a lot of, grimdark that's kind of that. This just feels like I that dark and grim but real at the same time, and I think that's what made this one work particularly well for me. I've read, there's a lot of the big kind of popular things in grimdark I haven't read, but I've read a lot of the other kind of bigger ones, or ones that are talked about. Like I said, I would put this up there with some of the best that I've read in that genre, and I think it just did a really fantastic job, and did better than some that I've read, even some that are more popular in a lot of ways as well. So definitely one I recommend. I enjoyed my time through this. I felt like I got through this very quickly. And it was, some of the times where you see what's going to happen and you know what's going to happen, and it's not because it's super predictable. It's just because the tone of the story and the way the setup is leading you right in that direction. And that almost kind of adds to the feeling, because it's almost that feeling of like you know what's going to happen and you know there's nothing you can do to stop it, and maybe there's nothing anyone, even the characters, can do to stop it because it's just going to happen. And so that's a really big thing I have to note too when I say that, because sometimes I felt like I always knew what was going to happen is a critique, and other times it's the author made it so clear to me where they were going. They had that strong of a voice and that strong of a storytelling structure that I could see where it was going to go in a good way. That's definitely one of those things that can go either way. I know I've praised it when done well, and I've definitely critiqued it when not done well, because if you're trying to make something be a big surprise, you're writing it like I'm not supposed to know and I figured it out immediately, that's a problem. But when you just kind of are letting me see things that are going to happen while also having some bigger reveals as well that are less obvious or that don't go the way that you think it's going to go, it makes a difference. And the way that those things are treated too, like I said, there are some specific moments as well in this where it's just like, you know what's supposed to happen, and instead we get the more realistic and the more grim kind of approach to it, and it just works really, really well. But overall, those are my thoughts on We Men of Ash and Shadow by H.L. Tinsley. Definitely want to recommend if you like the grimmer type of books. Absolutely worth checking out. Let me know if you've read this. I know at least a fair few people have read this, and I know I heard about it from Andrew, so I'm sure a lot of people heard about it from Andrew as well. I was really glad I finally got to this, though, and will absolutely be checking out however other many books there end up being in this series. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this if you read it or if you're interested in it down in the comments. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizardly Duo Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, any books, really anything at all. It is a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.